Who's got it better than us?
Nobody! It's being chased, thrown on the run, and it is caught. Touchdown, Keenan Allen. What a great...
My goal is not to break you. My goal is to make you harder to break.
Number six.
Huge sack by Joey Bosa.
Touchdown! 90-yard touchdown!
Off at the 8-yard line by Derwin James.
Sets his feet, takes a shot downfield, has Knighton caught. Touchdown, Chargers!
Grab your lunch boxes and go attack this day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome to the Thunder Down Under Chargers podcast. I am Andy Prophet, with me, Alistair Lloyd. We are stoked to have back to the show The Teach, Big Jack Reed, and a very, very warm welcome to the newest debutant on the TDU show. For more than 5 minutes of a cameo shot at least. He's an award-winning writer and podcast, done a lot of work on podcasts in the mental health space, which is awesome stuff. Our demographic would probably most likely know him from his long-time host role on the Lightning Round podcast. He's made it through a beer or two with Alistair over in San Diego, so the chances are he can put up with anything. Garrett Sisti, welcome to the show.
Oh, man. Thank you. That little mental health note was something I don't think most people know. So that's already digging deep, and I see Alistair's got the shirt that I gave him when he visited in San Diego.
Hey, I gotta tell a story about this one, Garrett. So the listeners, I was in the US for my honeymoon. Garrett would be too humble to mention this, but he, at short notice, drove more than an hour to meet me just for a beer and some Mexican food on a Friday afternoon. And then, maybe slightly less humble, he rocks up with some Lightning Round merchandise, completely familiar with his own celebrity status. He's like, here's some a t-shirt, some stickers. It was, I was in awe to be there with a guy who's clearly influenced the three of us, Jack and Andy, for years and years. Sure. So awesome to have you on the show, man.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I'm glad you got over here and we got to go to Old Town and have some good Mexican food. That was fun.
It's good. Now you need to come over and we'll need to show you around our hood.
Oh my gosh, definitely. That'll be happening.
Garrett, first of all, man, thanks heaps for taking the time to join us, jump on the show, talk some Chargers football. It's the doldrums of the off season, but still, with a new regime, there's plenty to sink your teeth into, and it's cyclical, isn't it? We're right back to getting excited of the new wave of Chargers football, and it was 3 years of a pretty prickly trail under the Staley regime. But what's been going on with you guys throughout the off season with the Lightning Round and everything you guys have been doing?
Yeah, I mean, so, we hit the draft season real hard. We did our draft profiles, we did our draft guide, we did the live draft show for 3 days straight during the entire draft process. And then we all said, we're going to take a break. And so Jamie and I and Craig, we all just have taken a month off, and we finally got back to it last week on Friday, well, a couple days ago, on Friday, started breaking down, training camp battles and all that. So we're back into it. We took a little break. We had some personal stuff going on, and then also just, wanted to take a little time off because we went so hard during the season and then roll right into the draft process. It's a lot. You guys know it's a lot. So we took the well-deserved break, and now we're back at it.
Yeah, I love the change in the format that you guys are doing, kind of, doing a lot more shows a week, but chopping and changing, doing some solo shows, and really just spreading the net of content. It's awesome to keep in touch with when we can find the ear space to get it all in. But
of course,
yeah, look, there's going to be a bit of churning and recycling of topics and stuff like that, because it is just the off season and stuff. But we've got you and Jack here today, so plenty of fresh takes, at least from the Thunder Down Under content. So looking forward to getting into the Chargers off season as the four of us. Then we've got a bit of fun with Knife and Spoon coming up, and ending on a high as always with the TDU Aussie quiz. So sure you've been doing your research for that, and we can have a bit of fun trying to make you look like you know nothing about the great Southern land.
Well, let me tell you, anytime I've ever seen your guys' show, and obviously I'm a big fan of you guys, I always, every guest is like, I did a bunch of research. I made sure to see what I could do to, get whatever knowledge. I went in blind because I didn't want to cheat. Yep. I don't know how many kangaroos per capita you guys have over there. I don't know anything. Transport, I don't know anything. Your state bird, nothing. I know nothing about anything. So I'm going in totally blind, and I will be happy to outscore anybody else that's taking this test.
You might not have seen, but Dan and Dave from Locked On Chargers did all of this prep, still
Right.
scored 0 out of 3.
Right.
So,
Yeah, because there's no
you're
way to
in
prep
good a
for it.
position
Yeah.
as them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're actually setting yourself up for a less of a fall because all this, we did 2 hours of study and it got them nowhere.
Exactly.
They ain't reading from our books, I tell you that much.
Yep. Keep expectations low. So even if
that's it.
if I score 0, I didn't study, so it all works out.
Now, Garrett, just before we kick off, I know you guys at TLR have had a bit of access to, the Chargers Park. Has any of that sort of started yet for you guys? Have you been able to get down there? Have you seen the new facility? Where are we with all that?
Yeah, so we saw they invited a bunch of the podcasters over to the old facility before they moved over to the Bolt. But no, nobody's been able to go over there and see it yet. They're working on getting us in there to get in there and visit training camp during one of the days. We haven't worked out the date yet. They haven't even, released tickets to the public yet to visit there. So it's all kind of in the air. We're working on a couple things, and we'll definitely be going, just to go and see, which is always my favorite part. When you're just inside baseball, I guess a little bit, just behind the curtain, when you go behind the fence and you're on the field and you get to look at what's going on up close, you don't get to tweet anything out. You don't get to tell anybody what's going on. You're not allowed to share any of that info. And then, you go in and you might be able to ask a question or two. And then once it's all over, they'll let you tweet what you want or post whatever you want. I like to be able to just sit in the stands, watch football freely, and then just have a conversation with everybody around me, tweet stuff out live, and not have the burden of having to keep everything close to the vest, which we'll do, I'm sure, sometime. But I love being able to just sit in the stands and watch football.
I was going to say, Garrett, can I just ask a question? Because a lot of the stuff that we see is by the Chargers PR team, and it's kind of very grand and very incredible. What's the difference between what you see on the field and what perhaps we see? Is the hype still the same, or is it just going to the office, lunch pail, this is what we're going to do? There are some nice throws, but generally it's pretty level-headed. What's it like?
Obviously they have a job to do, so they have to hype every single day up no matter what happens. And, I'm not there every single day. They obviously have a lot more access than I do, and I kind of pick and choose the days that I go to. But, there's days where you see flashes of a lot of fun stuff, and you see, the people that you'd hope stand out, and some that you'd hope stand out don't. And so, when
Trey
you go
McKitty.
in, yeah, well, that wasn't me. Was that you? Hoping would stand out. Yeah. Oh, was that you, Andy? Okay. All right. It was Andy. McKitty. I'm surprised you didn't wear your McKitty jersey today. Yeah. So, they're obviously going to hype it up as much as they possibly can, but also they're not going to talk about, Zion losing a bunch that day, or, or any injury that might or possibly could have happened. So there's a lot of stuff that they can't really talk about, and they're going to just hype up the best possible moment, which is normally a Herbert throw to somebody. And then for us, it's but Herbert didn't score in the red zone drills for 4 times in a row, but we're not seeing that, but we got to see the long throw to QJ on a sideline. So, there is,
wow, incredible.
Yeah. And he caught it. Yeah. In training camp, he did. And so, they, I admire what they do. They, it's not an easy job because the comments are always harsh, no matter what ends up happening.
Yeah.
But, for us, it's it does feel more level. Hey, there's a lot of good, there's some bad, and then you can kind of, tell it all. But on their side, it's all everything pinned up to the hype train,
Yeah.
which is great. It gives fans the hope, and it is nice to focus on a lot of that positive stuff. But, I like to be able to see both sides of it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, they only really talk about, the rookie cornerbacks picking off Easton Stick.
Right.
And stuff
Right.
like that. It's the slight negatives that you're happy to hear, right?
Yeah, sure.
But you're exactly it. It's possibly scripted or filtered as to what they can really, report about and stuff to give us a little bit of the string and not, go, Herbert's throwing picks, man. It's already over.
Right.
Try not to burn the house down before it's been finished. They've finished building it.
Sure.
All right, Jack, I'm going to throw over to you, man. Just give us your start us off with a couple of takeaways from OTAs, minicamp, anything that's really started to catch your attention.
Well, let's go a little bit left of field and let's go to the press conferences because
Wouldn't expect anything different from you, man.
Touching on what Garrett just said, it's hard for us to understand what's going on with all the hype videos. I just wanted to highlight possibly one of the best interviews outside of Ben Herbert, I thought, in terms of our staff, and that was by Sanjay Lal, the wide receivers coach. I was so impressed with the way that he spoke. And I guess why I'm doubling down on this is because the wide receiver room is probably the one part of the offense that I'm possibly most worried about. And it was fascinating to hear him talk about the room. And he wasn't I didn't think he was particularly complimentary either. A lot of reporters did try to dig in on the QJ element, and he was just sort of flat bat, not in the same way that a Staley would, but just quite matter of fact. And the way that he was talking about how Justin Herbert throws the ball and needing to learn how the connection between the room and Justin, I thought that was really, really interesting. And I thought he was quite cold to start off with, but then kind of the laugh, so there was some sort of witty comments that sort of started to shine through. So in terms of so I did on my off-season show last week, I went through player grades, positional grouping grades and things. The wide receiver is one that I was probably quite down on. But yeah, that he gave me a little bit of happiness, I think, to see that it seems to be in good hands, and I don't think he's particularly, he'll mollycoddle them at all. I think he'll be quite stern. So it'll be interesting to see the development of Palmer, QJ especially, but also McConkey walking in as well. And also a couple of the other guys lower down the depth chart. But yeah, Sanjay Lal, that was a super interesting press conference for mine.
I think he was a realist, Jack. I think that's what we've seen from this Harbaugh staff. And when we spoke on a show with Dave and Dan about the subtle differences between Staley and Jim Harbaugh, where Harbaugh's empowering a lot of his positional coaches to give these press conferences, and he's really standing back and taking more of a CEO kind of a role. And I just kind of want to double down on some of these differences that I've seen anyway. I think high participation and attendance rates is great. Joey Bosa's there instead of training out in Florida. You can see there's an energy amongst the playing group. Noticing, and I'll be interested, Garrett, when you go to training camp, if you make it down, if you notice this, you hear that they are conducting 11-on-11 drills, whereas Staley would always go with 7-on-7. And at Harbaugh practices, they're finishing with, pulling the sled and doing 10 to 15 minutes of lifting weights. And, Harbaugh's lifting weights with the team. Maybe some will say it's a bit more old school, but you even see it. I think Brandon Staley kind of put his foot in his own mouth too often. I thought he really endeavored to be open with media. He didn't like to give a politician's response. If someone said, hey, Brandon, what's the injury that Dayon Henley has? He found it really hard not to answer the specific question. Whereas you've already seen with Harbaugh, Daniel Popper from The Athletics trying to ask him questions about injuries, and he said, "Oh, it's a lower body injury, or he's on the mend." And I'll just set the scene. They're the only responses you'll be getting from me about injuries this year. It's just a different vibe, old school versus new school. What do you think about that, Garrett?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's obviously different. Just being at training camp, it felt like even with Anthony Lynn and Mike McCoy and with Staley, and I don't know if this is a Telesco thing because obviously they're all tied, but every time we went to training camp, they would start with a stretch drill. Obviously, they would stretch out, and then they would start with special teams drills where gunners are running down, they're kicking, everybody's standing around, which means everybody lower on the depth chart is getting active in these drills. Everybody else standing around waiting. It's really boring. So you go to training camp, you got all these fans here, you're excited about a brand new year. Everybody has hope, which happens every single football season, which is great. So you've got all this hype, everybody's ready, and then punters are kicking, and you got two guys running down, and all they're doing is fair catching, and sometimes they'll make a move or two on a return, but they're not actually returning the ball. And then we'd see some drills. They do some one-on-one. They do some catching. They'd run some 7-on-7. They'd run some 11-on-11 sometimes. And then at the very end, they run special teams again. And so you're like, you start low and then you start to peak at 11-on-11. And then everybody is like, well, I guess it's time to go home now. They don't even keep everybody for the full hour there at training camp because fans are like, I'm not going to watch this again. And so now fans are walking out, and it's it was a big letdown just in terms of like entertainment value. And listen, their job is not to entertain us. That's not their job. They need to win football games. So listen, but a little part of it is about keeping that fan base in there and getting them excited about the team. And they did not do that any year when they were there with Lynn, McCoy, or Staley. And that's just in training camp. And there is some exciting stuff on 7-on-7s and sometimes on the 1-on-1s and sometimes in the red zone drills. There were like peaks and stuff, but every drill started with the special teams and ended with special teams. And now Harbaugh's like, let's push it. You're tired. I don't want you to just kicking and standing around and catching your breath. Let's go and push this truck across the driveway, or, pull this boulder. They'll be doing other, old school type strength and conditioning drills, which are a lot more exciting to me than watching, J.K. Scott kick the ball and DeAndre Carter or whoever, Darius Davis.
Well, we do love our punters in Australia, Garrett, but even for us, I think it would be too far.
Right. But you're just seeing a stationary punter just kick the ball in the air. We're not seeing any fun punters do fun punting things. So yeah, so having this regime is definitely a breath of fresh air. And to see, when I got to go to the other facility and have the position coaches come out front and all these players come out, I mean, we're even seeing Herbert turn a whole new corner. I mean, now he's getting in front of a mic and he's answering a lot more questions, and you're seeing a lot more of the coaching staff is face than you ever did under any of the other coaches under Telesco. And it's great from not only from a perspective standpoint where like the fans are excited because we get to see Sanjay Lal and learn about, his history and his, being able to see his success with Amari Cooper and even T.Y. Hilton. I mean, a lot of other Charger fans wouldn't even know who the other wide receiver coaches are really, but now we got to see him in front of a microphone and going, oh, he's got some success. This is pretty cool. And maybe he's cold, but there's some personality there. So yeah, there's definitely a new flavor to this new staff. And there's nothing not to love about it. I mean, even with the kind of mundane answers about injuries, who cares that now they're not giving anything away, but we're still getting to see, a lot more personality with everything else. And it's just one of those topics you're probably not going to get much out of him, which is fine because he's going to give you a lot more from everything else.
Yeah, for sure. I don't mind the smoke screen on the mirror stuff, on the injury stuff. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, he's not a doctor. He's not part of the medical team. He stays in his lane and he executes his role. I want to, and Jack, I'm sort of aiming this one at you because I know that you like to talk about the cultivation of leadership and stuff like that. But I'm thinking of the true impact of the leadership strengths of Jim Harbaugh on furthering the leadership aspect of Justin Herbert, and I guess by proximity, bringing out the other veterans on this team. How do you see the culture generate the underlying confidence in the players?
I think it's probably the perfect time that Harbaugh and Herbert have kind of crossed paths. I think it's taken a little bit of time for Justin Herbert to really grow into a leader. And because he has a style of leadership that isn't the rah-rah, get behind me, Jameis Winston, eat your fingers and let's go. He's probably a little more, all right, guys, jump on my back. Very, very good thing. Jump on my back and let's just go and perform. But when you've got, a young coach also in Brandon Staley, you had Anthony Lynn, not so much, but they are also trying to figure out, Anthony Lynn I think it was a fairly good leader, probably not a great tactician. But, Brandon Staley was trying to figure out who he was as a leader, I think at the same time as also being a defensive coordinator. And I think when you have a young leader in Justin Herbert that needs to figure that out too, what Harbaugh is presenting as an older gentleman, it goes back to, listen, this is what I'm going to say, and that's all I'm going to say. But he does it in a way that's so becoming and so kind. And the reporters go, oh, okay. Because he gives, as you said, they give other things. So listen, I don't know what it's like, Garrett, and I'd love to hear your opinion on it. But to me, Justin Herbert getting in front of a mic seems to have a lot more control. The negative is that this is his 7th offensive system in as many years. But in some ways, maybe they're leveraging that and saying, hey, Justin, mate, you've done it for the last 7 years. You played at a super high level. So don't worry about it. You'll be fine. And perhaps, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams leaving, has that left a little bit of a hole in terms of leadership for Justin Herbert to step up into? I don't know. But from the training camps, what do you feel? Is there more control at the line of scrimmage that Justin Herbert has? Is there more vocalization? What's it like?
Yeah, so when we went, we didn't, they were just in the throes of OTAs, like right at the beginning. So we just got to see workouts. So we didn't get to see them start practicing yet or throw any balls to anybody. I mean, they were playing basically pitch and catch. They were just throwing to each other, and there was nothing really going on. So I don't know from that perspective, but just seeing him step up in front of a microphone feels like a whole different type of person from his college days to being drafted. Even when he got drafted, it felt like he was uncomfortable in front of a microphone, even though he was, a top 10 pick and, was becoming a franchise now quarterback for a brand new team. He still, even in front of a microphone, wasn't very comfortable. Every year now with the Chargers, hasn't seemed very comfortable, always hiding behind the camera. Chargers, always made a joke about him, trying to avoid the camera. But now he's stepping in front of a microphone in OTAs and willing to answer questions from everybody. We didn't really get to see a lot of that. So it feels like it's not just a normal season. It's, he's more comfortable now, even with Harbaugh, and he's kind of coming out of his shell a little bit. And Harbaugh, whether it was calculated or not, the first thing he said when he got hired was, "I can't wait to work with Herbert." He praised Herbert, his arm, his talent, and how lucky he is to be able to team with a guy like Herbert. And so that feels like it went a long way with him. And I know a lot of the other coaches were kind of complimentary of Herbert, but this felt like a real genuine, like I'm ride or die with Herbert. And it felt like a big part of why Harbaugh took this job in general was because he had a guy like Justin Herbert. So it does feel a lot different than it did in years past.
And the team also made the moves, Garrett, building on that, to actually put the organization into the hands of Justin Herbert. When you let Keenan Allen, this fantastic veteran, walk to Chicago, and you cut Mike Williams, and you start to people knew that Bosa and Max contracts were high, and perhaps they wouldn't be on the team. What you're saying is, hey, Justin, this is now your team moving forward, if it wasn't already. We expect a little more from you. You might need to do some more with less around you, relying on receivers on their rookie contracts or short-term veterans who come in like DJ Chark, and you've got to find that chemistry immediately. I think that might be challenging for Herbert, but also really enable him to fulfill his potential. That's what Tom Brady and Phillip Rivers, we needn't look any further than Phillip Rivers. How often would he get the most out of receivers of the caliber of, say, Jira Tutu and these kind of guys? You're like, what?
Yeah.
And suddenly he's, catching the touchdown in the end zone at Arrowhead. And you're just like, fuck, that's what a franchise quarterback does. Almost dropped a bomb there.
You got excited. That was a fun touchdown.
Got excited. I know. It was a fun touchdown.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see it anyway. I'm also excited to see some coaches who know what they're doing just from the experience of 10, 15, 20 years in the league. And Jack, I know you loved seeing Greg Roman on Mic'd Up, who is actually kind of coaching the coaches on not overcoaching the players. Yeah. There was one specific moment where it was just like, hey, that's okay. We want them to be precise, but they're allowed this bit of discretion too. And I felt like that was something lacking with a young guy like Staley who's still trying to find his feet. We've got Jesse Minter, who's that guy, the young genius coordinator on defense. But we've got Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh, who've done it for 15, 20 years. And that balance, I think, is much more optimistic and exciting for the Chargers fans.
Yeah, it just seems to me also, you strip away Keenan Allen and you strip away Mike Williams, but you also have Shane Day return, and clearly that's a safety blanket for Justin Herbert. I found it very peculiar when Shane Day walked away, a year or so ago, and Herbert, obviously clearly wanted it. So I think the support is there, but just maybe not what the fans are used to. Fans are used to seeing a stacked wide receiver room, perhaps a stacked running back room to a point with Austin Eckler, let's call it stacked. But all of a sudden, all those things are stripped away. I just think it's going to be a different Justin Herbert. It's going to be a different offense. We might talk about that in a second. But I think all the pieces are there behind the scenes for Justin Herbert to take that mantle. I think that mantle is number one. Look at Josh Allen. I mean, Josh Allen's going to have to do it this year as well. So,
yeah, sweet. Any further takeaways just from the OTAs and minicamp? Because we're gonna move on into just sort of how the roster's been compiled, changed up a little bit. So if you all want to jump in with any last little take there before I get over to you, Garrett. With look, when this new regime took over, cap situation wasn't ideal, but I think they've done a pretty good job at manipulating things, moving things around. A few surprises in there with Joey Bosa taking a pay cut, for example, and obviously cap casualties, stars of the team for a long time, going elsewhere. What do you think about the ins and outs of the signings that the team made outside of the draft on a short-term versus long-term kind of proposition for how this team's going to be built and run?
I am, I think, in the minority, and maybe I'm not, but I have been a really big fan of the way they've built this offseason. And I know a lot of Charger fans aren't, because there just isn't any marquee names. And you look at, you mentioned the wide receiver room, even the cornerback room, the safety room. I mean, there are some linebacker group. I mean, there are some position groups that seem very, very thin. But what I like about this offseason moves and the way in which they built the roster, one, when we're talking about, this coaching staff and everything, I think some credit needs to go to the ownership group in giving Ortiz and Harbaugh the reins and saying, we're going to go hands off. You guys are proven winners. You guys do what you do, and put together a roster that you guys see fit, build it in your image. Because it felt like with Telesco, there was some kind of hand-holding with John Spanos and maybe a little bit of meddling. And it felt like there wasn't really an identity, and it felt a lot of like mixed wires, and it didn't feel like there was a real plan of attack in free agency. And we're kind of seeing now with Telesco, it was, buy high on these guys, and then, the depth would kind of fall out, and then the team would bottom out. And he's doing it with the Raiders again by, investing a ton in Christian Wilkinson, and then not having a quarterback or any other depth. But, we're past that. That man can't hurt us anymore. So we're in better place.
We'll double back to that later. Yeah. Don't worry. Don't you worry.
Right. But what I do like is that, what they did is almost the opposite. They built from the bottom up. So now the depth of having Bradley Bozeman and Hymas, having Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, and, bringing in Perryman and even Poona Ford, they kind of made sure that the depth, while there isn't star talent across, any of those names, there are good enough depth that if J.K. Dobbins gets injured again, well, you got Gus Edwards, you've drafted Kamani Vidal, you've got Spiller already. Well, at least they'll be okay. If Hayden Hurst gets hurt, well, there's Disley still there and Parham still there, and at least it's not going to be a total lost cause. And if Bozeman gets hurt, McFadden looked like he could have some work at center. Hymas flashed sometimes last season. It just feels like there's enough depth there that one or two injuries isn't going to completely tank the season. It feels like there's enough veteran depth that they were able to fill in spots that they absolutely had to, and then kind of filled everything else in the draft, and were able to kind of build some depth from the bottom up rather than the top, and then everything else kind of just left to their devices.
I always thought Telesco built really immature teams, or he took a very immature approach to team building. And when I say that, I mean there's a massive difference between the best and the worst. That sine wave was really large because of what you were saying, Garrett. There's some great players and awesome when they're on the field, but a lot of the time, you've got to understand in the NFL that you're not going to have your best players all the time. But it seems like that it's, And Telesco never learned. He had 10 years, and it was always this. The great times were great, but the bad times were even worse. So I think it's just, decreasing that sine wave, and that's when you get consistency. And that's what winners do. It's consistent. It's week in, week out. We know what we're going to do. And I think that will not only mirror the roster construction, but that will probably mirror the way we play the game offensively as well. I don't know if we're going to be more predictable. Predictable is probably not the right word, but for lack of a better term, I'll use it. Excuse me. I'm fighting off this cold. Where was I? So predictable, and I like it. And you're right. Yes, there aren't some sexy names, but I tell you what, there's going to be players that want to play and that want to make a name for themselves. And that is something that I love to have on a team, is guys that, yeah, cool, they're not headline names, but geez, they're going to work for it. And with someone like Harbaugh, they're, leading the ship. I think that that positivity and that want to work is going to be there, shifting boulders and such.
Hey, predictable, professional, even.
Let's go professional.
A professional football team. And the bit that I've loved, Garrett, is just a GM who wants to actually build up a cycle of compensatory picks. It's not bad. Like the Ravens' approach of get guys in on 1-year deals. If they hit, great. They hit free agency again. Another team picks them up, and you get a 5th, 6th, 7th round comp pick. You use those picks to trade at the trade deadline in the middle of the season. When you're armed with a couple of extra day 3 picks, you can raid those bad teams around the trade deadline as you make a deep playoff push. You'll go, we don't have a good defensive tackle at the moment, Garrett. We might get to week 9 and we flick off one of those 6th round picks that we got from the cycle to, attack someone who's maybe being released for cap reasons by another team. So I see a lot of professionalism. Andy, with like signings or other decisions, we've liked a lot of them. I'll talk about like a non-decision I'm a bit surprised about. Standing here with about $10 million in cap space, entering training camp, I'm still a bit surprised the team hasn't targeted a true CB1. I know that, the market's a little bare, but there is Stephon Gilmore out there. He showed he could still play last year, apart from the playoff game against Green Bay. He still has the ability to mirror wide receiver ones. And Garrett, do you think, are we really going to enter this year with Asante Samuel as cornerback 1, Christian Fulton as cornerback 2 with all the uncertainty there, and then rookies? Do you think that's what we're doing, or could we see a late signing at some stage at the position?
We kind of talked about it in the podcast we did going over training camp, but it feels like cornerback is probably priority number 1 when teams start making those 53 cuts, when there are some cap casualties where you're going to see, some corner that, some team doesn't want to pay, or a veteran that gets released, or there's a rookie that was really promising in preseason, but they don't have the numbers. I think that's where they have to start picking off some corners, because there is no known in this cornerback group. Zont has been good for the most part, bad at times. I don't think anybody's comfortable with him being CB1. Christian Fulton hasn't had a consistent season in a long time after his second year in the NFL. We're hoping to change the scenery. We'll change that, but still an unknown. You got rookies. You got 2 dudes who were UDFAs a couple years ago. There's just so many question marks on that group. So it feels to me like when you start looking at these other teams and you look at the waiver wire, when they start making cuts to 53, it feels like cornerback is going to be their biggest priority in getting some depth in that room.
Yeah. Al, do you think it's like an uneasy feeling kind of hanging out for a potential CB1? And obviously it's kind of rattled you a little bit in the sense, I agree with you. I don't think that Asante or Fulton are viable CB1 options. Both have a skill set, both have detriments physically and otherwise. But hanging out that long until, the 53-man cuts, which makes a lot of sense. Rome wasn't built in a day. They couldn't walk in here and fix every problem. Is CB1 like something you would have thought would be addressed earlier and more of a priority?
I look at the Ravens model, and they haven't always gone with the true CB1. They've had Marlon Humphrey at certain times, but otherwise they've had a bit of a cornerback by committee group with Brandon Stevens and, Ronald Darby and short-term guys who come in. So I'm prepared to just sit and watch, because I know what Jesse Minter did at Michigan last year. Yes, they had one pretty talented young corner who's probably going to be a high pick last year, but they rely on a lot of zone coverage on the back end, high blitz rate, high disguise. And I see the Chargers team have invested in edge rusher, right? You've got these 4 edges. So maybe what they're going to say is, hey, we'll play a bit off in zone. We'll rush the passer well, and we'll just trust these guys for at least a year not to have a true cornerback 1, and we'll save the money. Maybe draft one next year. That's the other possibility. And I'm just willing to watch and see how it plays out.
Yeah, I was gonna touch on that too, and I think that's a really good point, Alistair. It feels like they built out this edge group, which may be the best in football in terms of depth, and saying you can't really hide a bad pass rush. If you have a bad pass rush, that quarterback's back there forever, and you could have the best corners in the NFL. Yeah. If they've got to cover for 8 or 9 seconds, it's over. That wide receiver is going to get open. So they can mask some of those deficiencies with the way in which they're going to be blitzing, Thule and Mack and Bosa and Dupree, and having them fresh because they're so deep that, they're going to have fresh legs and they're going to be able to blitz everybody and even maybe kick a couple inside. Thule kicks inside, and you've got Mack and Bosa on the edge, and then you've got just, a NASCAR package, or if you want to be able to mix and match and just keep legs fresh and you're going every other down so everybody can, rush at their best possible, blitz rate. That's another way in which going it, but it feels like they went so heavy on the edge rushers that they're thinking we can't fix our entire roster in a single year. And yes, we were able to double dip in the 5th round and get Still and Hart. And that's great. But also, we had to get an interior defensive lineman. We had to get Joe Alt. We had to get a wide receiver. We had to get Junior Carlson, who's still there. We had to, get the interior defensive line. So there were a lot of holes to fill. And so they go, maybe corner can, survive this year with the kind of pass rush we've got.
Yeah, I think it comes down to that. You can't fix every hole in the blanket with one stitch. So, look, beef up on the pass rush, put the pressure on the quarterback, and maybe try and keep the backfield a bit free. I don't know if the team paid for Tony Jefferson's LASIK surgery, but maybe if the guy can see, he won't be all kinds of helpless in the backfield there. All right. Any other decisions, guys, signings that, you thought were above all the others? Anyone in particular? Otherwise, we'll roll right along to what we could expect from training camp. Jack, do you want to hit us off with maybe one of the positional camp battles that you're really looking forward to seeing, and how you see that position group sort of unfold as the off-season keeps going?
Yeah. I mean, I'm super interested to see what the running back group looks like. If Kamani Vidal is going to be getting touches at all, or is he just going to be that, Isaiah Spiller-esque? Speaking of Isaiah Spiller, I'd be really interested to see if he's going to get some ball, because, Gus the Bus and Dobbins there, they feel to me like they've been signed to do a bulk of the work. They're knowns to Roman and Harbaugh. What did Eckler say in a podcast? He sort of had an offhanded comment about, I had a chat with the Chargers, had a chat with Harbaugh, and they're looking for a guy to carry the ball 300-400 times, and that's just not me. That's just not what I do. So, is it going to be running back by committee? Can we trust J.K. Dobbins' health? Gus the Bus is effective, but I would say that his tool set is relatively narrow. He does, he runs between the tackles really well. That's probably about it. And what Spiller is going to do. Is he going to be more of a receiving back? Because we know he can catch it, but there were a couple of times early on last season, I should say, where, there was some power and there was some burst from him. Those, what I would think be sort of 2 to 3 yards, sort of turned into 4 and 5. Hopefully he's got his body right. I'll always die on the hill that he was drafted very young and that he needed a little bit more time in a weight room.
Garrett, we got to bring you in. We've had this, when Spiller came out of A&M, I didn't like his tape very much. And I just thought he was a limited athlete. 4th round was fine. I just wasn't I thought he faced an uphill battle to be an effective NFL back. And Jack's just played he's very young. He's likely, so each off season we're like, is this the year? Is this the year? Is this the year?
Yeah.
I think we're up to we're in the crucible now. This is the year. Otherwise, I think I'm going to have to give myself a tick on that one.
Oh, I was in your camp, Alistair, for sure. I'm having the same argument with Craig at the moment, so I totally know where you're coming from.
Yeah,
but Spiller's going to be interesting because do they even keep 4 running backs with as much, spots they need in corner, say DB spot or linebacker or tier defensive line, offensive line? I don't know.
Do they want a fullback? All that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's about 15 wide receivers currently on the extended roster. So, I mean,
and half of them are called Johnson. So,
yeah,
that's right.
I think it's going to try and be one of those things where we just go, I didn't realize that there were 3 different guys. I thought it was just one with different names. And we'll just try and squeeze them all in because Harbaugh won't be able to say goodbye. Eckler, classic millennial, wanting more money for less work.
Yeah,
best you go elsewhere, brother. That's all good.
Yeah,
I'm not heard about him. Kicking up a stink and leaving the Chargers or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think running back's going to be a really interesting one. I think the question around the 4 in the position may come down to what they think is really viable in terms of the injury history that Edwards and Dobbins have had, and cutting one early might end up with one of the 2 of those guys, and then an increased role for Spiller and Kamani, which maybe not something they want to sort of rest on. They'd rather have one backup just in case. I know Harbaugh has said that the main 5 have really separated themselves on the offensive line, but I'm still interested to see if there's more of a battle for right guard with Pipkins and Solier, McFadden, Jaimez, how that sort of unfolds itself. I think that's going to be a really interesting battle. I was kind of, I know Alan, Jack will definitely have more to add on, the physical traits of Pipkins being able to play right guard in this scheme. Jack already disagreeing or just doesn't believe it. It's
well,
a real
who's buying? I think who's buying it is the real. Garrett, are you buying it? Like, we've watched Trey Pipkins, what he's good and not good at.
Yeah.
Strength profile's never really been his thing. At guard, it all moves a lot quicker. You've got people crossing your face. You've got really stout defensive ends who can get underneath you and push you back. Is this really going to work? Because we've all accepted, Pipkins could be a good right guard. Is this happening?
Well, the Chargers think so far. I mean, he's winning the battle, but I don't know. I don't see where it worked. I just thought it was kind of cute during OTAs, but I don't know, man. He always felt kind of more like a finesse offensive lineman where,
Correct.
Telesco always talked about the feet or whatever. But when you got to work in a phone booth, you usually want your powerful, squatty type guards. You don't want your like tall finesse working type guards. That's not my style. It doesn't feel like Greg Roman's style, offensive style. So I don't know. It's definitely going to be a battle because it feels like, Salyer deserves at least a look there. McFadden definitely deserves a look there. I feel like Jaimez deserves some look there and at center. So I would hope they'd give him a true kind of competition there, which I feel like Harbaugh will do. But I'm not really buying it now.
Okay. I'll see when I believe it. Basically,
Yeah.
I think he'll get the opportunity. It's more about do I believe he's an NFL quality starter at guard. I think he's played 0 snaps at guard at high school or college level. Well, I don't know about high school, but college or the NFL. It's a big ask to come in a gap scheme. He hasn't really played in one of those and just, here you go, feed you to the wolves. So I don't know. Maybe it's a guy like Carson Barnhart or Leatherwood or someone we're not even talking about who actually wins the job. But yeah, slim pickings, actually, now you mentioned a couple of those names. Leatherwood or Pipkins? I mean, wow.
All right, maybe one more each, guys. Another position sort of camp battle that we're willing to see before we move on to anything else in the off-season.
I'll go. I've said that the interior of the defensive line is a bit porous. I'm looking forward to seeing Otito come back. Puna, I wrote an article on Stormcloud, and a lot of people have thought, I think Tau, again, wonderful stats, said that Puna had some of his best years a couple of years ago, and talking about his usage rates, generally he had his good years when he was nose tackle rather than lining up in sort of that in sort of those A gaps. So I think he'll be DT number 1. But still, I still think there's something to be added there if we're going to go deep into the postseason this year. But DT is another one. I haven't heard too much about it. We all know, Garrett, I'm not sure if you know, but I wasn't a huge fan of the Aboigbe pick. But we'll sort of have to wait and see there. I'm really interested to see how that group rounds out.
Yeah, I was very interested to hear them say that they thought that he had a second round grade on their board. Because I didn't see that at all, but I mean, he's definitely going to get some run, that's for sure. It's going to be that interior defensive line is going to be really interesting because I'm just curious what the rotation is going to be. I'm a big fan of Ford. I've been a really big fan of Ford, and I'm really excited to see him in the interior. But it feels like this also is going to be the year where a lot of the guys who kind of have won favor, whether it was deserved or not, with a previous regime, whether a guy like Atito Abonia or JT Woods or like Dean Leonard are actually going to get that same grace as they have because of their, where they were drafted and who they were drafted by, because, Morgan Fox is there now. We know Morgan Fox, Puna Ford, Scott Matlock, who everybody has high hopes for. They just drafted Aboigbe in the 3rd round. So they obviously have a role set out for him. Where does Tito go? Is Gerard Clark in the mix there? Hinton. It's going to be interesting to see that kind of rotation and who wins that, because Tito, while everybody had high hopes for him, has not been healthy and has been more down than up. So, hopefully with a new regime and this new staff, it'll help him and his career going forward. But, they talked about him every training camp. It was how great Tito was, how great Abonia was going to be. Can't wait to see him on the field. And then, we see him for 5 or 6 games each season. So I'm just curious to see where those guys who, JT Woods, Bonia, even Dean Leonard, who really stunk up the preseason, but everybody's like, but he's at a great camp and he's going to be part of it. And he got some looks on special teams, but I'm curious how this new staff sees all those new guys.
Yeah.
Or at least those guys from the other regime.
Yeah.
Me too. Maybe last one, Andy, from me. Is there any chance that Darius Davis is cut from this roster? So I think no, below 50% that he gets cut. I think he'll make the team. The reason why I think it's a question is because, yes, he was an all-pro punt returner. However, the change to the kickoff rules seems to me like it will prioritize more of your Cordarrelle Patterson guy who can maybe break a couple of tackles pushing through with the returning defending players a bit closer to you. And Darius Davis as a kick-off returner last year was below average. So I don't think this new rule will help him. So the question then is, how much does Harbaugh and Roman value essentially a punt return specialist who was the best in the NFL last year? And then really he was only used on a handful of snaps per week. Can they find a role in this offense for him? Because if he makes the team, I dare say one of Cornelius Johnson or Brendan Rice is not making the team. We'll have to try and stash them on the practice squad. I can't see 7 wide receivers making this final roster personally. What do you reckon, Garrett?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It feels like they're going to keep Darius Davis just to hope to give him a little edge on special teams. I would think. I totally get the argument. With the new kickoff rules, yes, it feels more like a kickoff, but then you've got a guy who's got that kind of otherworldly speed. You'd hope that it would benefit him, but it doesn't feel like both those 7th round picks will be making the team. One of them, I do not think will be making it, because it doesn't feel like there's any room when you have Palmer and McConkey and Quentin Johnson for sure making it. I'm sure they're going to have a veteran guy like DJ Chark. Then from there it's Brendan Rice and Cornelius Johnson, and then every other wide receiver on the roster. And it just doesn't feel like, you've got Darius Davis in that group too, obviously. It just doesn't feel like both those guys are going to end up making the 53.
Great.
Yeah, sweet. All right, just before we move on, I think we've all sort of brought it up, the old regime and the new, and the interesting scenario that's playing out in the cornerback room, the Taylor and Leonard versus Still and Hart, the Staley duo versus the Ortiz duo. I think that's going to be a really interesting battle as the offseason plays out. But we've touched on that a little bit, and I think it's time for a little bit of fun. So,
Nick, give him your wallet.
What for?
He's got a knife.
A knife? You call that a knife? This is a knife. That's a knife.
That's not a knife, that's a spoon.
All right, you win. I see you've played knifey spoony before.
Jack and his mastercrafts. Fun segment here, guys, where we take turns handing out knives for things we've loved or we like, and spoons for things that are a little less blunt, a little more blunt. I'm going to kick things off, and we've mentioned it. The first knife I am giving out is to pay a bit of praise for the grouping of the running backs, actually. Like a mid-range quality set of steak knives. I saw an underperforming unit in 2023 get near completely turned on its head, bring in 2 ex-Ravens played under G. Rowe. They keep Spiller there for the moment. We'll see how that goes. And then drafting Kamani Vidal, a guy who I really enjoyed watching out of Troy. I guess the steak knives to the premier kitchen knives that Harbaugh is labeling the offensive line. I'm optimistic this group won't be complete arse because it's going to be relied on in a way heavier fashion to what the running back group was last year. So my first knife. Over to you, fellas.
All right, I will jump in and hand another one, Andy. I'm going to hand the world's largest knife per the Guinness World Records, which is a 6,000-pound, 37-foot-long pocket knife located in Radcliffe, Kentucky.
What pocket?
Ever seen it, Garrett?
Don't know. No, never seen it. I don't think I have a pocket big enough.
Never been to Radcliffe, Kentucky? Well, nope. I'm handing the world's largest knife to Mike Devlin, the offensive line coach, and the collection of big boys. Jack, you love the big boys. What I like my offensive line coaches fat and large. Mike Devlin looks like an offensive line coach. Our previous guy just didn't. He looked like kind of a Staley guy. And as soon as Harbour and Ortiz have arrived, we have added 8 300-plus pound players to the offensive line, from guys like Bozeman to Brent Lang, Carson Barnhart, Alex Leatherwood, and my favourite, Jack, one of the UDFA's, Tyler McClellan, an offensive tackle from Campbell. He weighs 355 pounds. That's a huge bitch. So I'm handing the world's largest knife out to the new vision of this Chargers offensive line. Over to you, Garrett.
Can I do outside of Chargers? Because I feel more NFL ready. Okay. Because I know you guys are going to do all Chargers. It feels like this offseason, I've absolutely loved what the Lions have done. So it feels like a machete, like something you're cutting through the rainforest with. It's, they're going to, because it feels like they're just going to cut through teams this year. They're already knocking at the door of NFC supremacy. Then they pick up Kevin Zeitler. They get DJ Reader. They get Marcus Davenport. And then they add Terrion Arnold and Enos Rakestraw in the draft. I mean, they are going for it. And I just love what they've done this year. And not only have they filled in with some, they traded for Carlton Davis, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So not only have they, made the trades for veterans, they've had a lot of homegrown talent too with their past drafts. This just feels like a team that's just going to be mowing through teams this year. And I am so proud of what they've done in Detroit. I love what they're doing. And I think, I love what the Chargers did too. So I think they're primed to be a dangerous team this year. And so the knife to me is a machete, because they're just going to be cutting through teams this year. It's going to be a good one.
Nice. Oh, Garrett, you took one of my favorites. I had the Lions as well.
Too.
Yeah, I just love what they're doing.
Yeah,
this is the Thunder Down Under Lions podcast.
Yeah. No extra points on the TDU quiz for that though.
Damn it. Okay,
but they re-signed Goff, and they re-signed Amon-Ra, and they re-signed Sewell as well. So,
and they kept Ben Johnson.
It's just incredible.
Yeah.
I love what they, and they deserve it. Detroit, we're all big fans of Eminem, Slim Shady,
of course.
Have a big affinity for Detroit.
Have you got an impression on you, Jack?
Not today.
Oh, okay.
And funnily enough, Alistair, you've taken mine, because I had one for the offensive line construction. But let's go to Carolina, and let's go to a spoon. And I'm giving the Carolina Panthers an absinthe spoon. And if we know what an absinthe spoon is, it's a spoon that sits on top of the glass, and it's perforated, and you melt a bit of sugar and it drips through. And I think that is a perfect metaphor for what they got in return for Brian Burns. I cannot believe one of the premier pass rushers in the NFL, they got sweet fuck all for him, in my opinion. And I don't know what they're doing there in Carolina. They don't like caps, that's for sure. And they don't like signs outside of restaurants.
No cap for real.
I hate them.
But I just think, what are you doing? I mean, you had the number 1 draft pick last year. You've got a carousel at coaching at head coach. And I just think it's just dripping through the spoon. And yeah, it's making things sweeter, but at the end of the day, you still got to have a shot of absinthe. It fucking sucks. So see you later, Carolina.
Yeah, nice. I think on the Carolina thing, wasn't there a rumor that David Tepper was asking his wife for her input during the draft?
Oh my God.
If it's not a public disgrace of that guy, it's like you've just spent billions of dollars wasting a poor expansion franchise since you took over. So all kinds of spoons going to him. But
did you guys, just a side note, did you guys see the Hard Knocks clip of him where they're talking about trading Brian Burns?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. It's funny how it's, it's almost like how anybody would talk, like how you're making trades in fantasy football or anything. It's just, it's so, he was just like, hey, what do you think about Brian Burns? Do you give me 2 firsts for him? Like just while watching a prospect during the draft season. And then the Giants GM was like, not 2, and then it was like, that's how it happens. They're not like on the phone or like, there's no paperwork involved. They're just kind of, spitballing ideas. And it's funny to watch how that process works, because it's very, normal conversation.
Yeah, right. All right. My first spoon is, and I couldn't help myself, FTR all the way. Telesco goes over there, starts making a disaster of the Las Vegas Raiders. But my first spoon goes to the Raiders off season. Tommy couldn't help himself when that shiny new toy popped up in the first round shop window. They took Michael Mayer last year. We don't have a quarterback, but let's take Brock Bowers and we'll have 2 first-round tight ends. Clearly what we need without a guy to throw it to him. As I said, stacked class, didn't take a QB. He's happy wrapping a Gardner Minshew-shaped Band-Aid over the position. There's already unrest with Devontae Adams that's clearly going to outlive the Josh McDaniels era. And like I said, any chance I get, FTR.
Not
Spoon
bad.
to the Raiders.
And of course
I think there's a real chance that they finish 4th in the division, even though the Broncos are struggling.
And Telesco had his perennial random 3rd-round pick, Delmar Glaze, or something.
Oh,
Some guy no one had ever heard.
I know.
Donut guy. Yeah.
Donut guy.
Donut guy.
Who's probably who didn't expect to be drafted and was doing something, not expecting to get drafted, just like every other.
That's
Chargers
right.
round
Hanging
pick.
out in Sioux Falls, and then he's a 3rd-round pick.
Right. At the bowling
working.
alley,
That's where
in the
he's
shower. Yeah, he was getting donuts. Yeah.
I'll go one more positive. I'm going to hand out a knife, and this one's called a skin deux. And that is a small, single-edged Scottish knife, a skin deux, worn as part of a traditional Scottish Highland dress attached to the
My
kilt.
uncle has one of them. Yeah.
Right.
Where's the
You
kilt?
were wearing one Saturday night, weren't you? So I'm handing the skin deux out to, of course, Prince Olatoke, the International Player Pathway Program Nigerian/Scotland sprinter.
Nice.
Scotland's under-20 athlete of the year in 2019. Ran a 10.27 meter 100 meter dash. Sorry, 10.27 second 100 meter dash at Ohio State. And why I'm handing this knife out is it feels like the days of having nobody who's fast at all in the wide receiver room is a thing of the past. And now we've got Darius Davis, DJ Chark, Lad McConkey, and even the guys we're bringing in as fringe practice squad guys can run 4.3 or 4.4, or at least close to 4.3s. It's the reverse of Telesco. I no longer want to see wide receivers in quicksand who can't get separation. We've seen it for years, Garrett. Hopefully this is a thing that bodes well for the future. So skin deux to Prince Olatoke.
Oh, were you throwing it to me? I'm sorry. Is that what you said, Garrett? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So my spoon.
That's how the cookie's made, Garrett. When I say Garrett, you're up next, brother. Let's go.
I'm ready. So I'm giving out a spoon.
First time
My
podcasting,
spoon-
is it, mate?
Yeah. This is fun. Thanks. I appreciate you guys bringing me on. I might do this later. This might be in my future. I just heard Garrett and I thought you were like, oh,
You're
like,
good at
listen, this is who this guy is.
yeah.
Cool.
This is active talk.
Yeah. My spoon is going to Aaron Rodgers, and it's like a novelty spoon. You know those spoons you get in like a gas station, or like I'm sure you guys see it all the time. There's some stupid Australian like tiny novelty spoon at a gift shop that some family member wants to come and see and visit and buy, and they're collector's items. That's for me. That's for Aaron Rodgers. This man played 4 snaps last year in his Jets tenure, tears his Achilles. He went all last season, went on Pat McAfee's show, got him in trouble, got himself in trouble, became a distraction, wasn't even on the field, then kept teasing how his injury and recovery was going to surpass modern medicine and the laws of physics, never saw the field. He never came back. Rather than letting an injury like that fuel you, which happens to a lot of players, something bad happens and they want to get out there and they want to prove themselves and they go, listen, this is my year. Look, if you had one shot, you had one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment. Would you capture or just let it slip? No. Rodgers lets it slip. He's a distraction. He brings a mess with him. He missed mandatory minicamp for some bizarre reason that nobody knows. His coach doesn't know. He gets his coach in trouble because he's getting asked questions. Where's Aaron Rodgers? I don't know. It's an unexcused absence. I don't know. He comes and goes, hey, listen, no distractions in 2024. And then all he's been is the main distraction. So the Jets have a pretty good roster on paper, and they're already starting off on the wrong foot. And they haven't even started training camp. As soon as that starts ramping up, it's just going to start magnifying everything. So, and it's not it's not Rodgers that's having to answer these questions. It's his teammates, it's his coaches. And now they're getting bombarded with all these questions about Aaron Rodgers that Aaron Rodgers isn't answering because he's not even there. So it just seems to me that Aaron Rodgers has become just a novelty at this point, just like the novelty spoon. Nobody uses that spoon. They just collect them. It's just to look at. You don't actually use it. So for now, Rodgers is just for show, and he gets my novelty spoon.
Amen. Amen. I've always thought that of Aaron Rodgers. I have never been an Aaron Rodgers. Well, on the field, yes, but off the field.
Oh, sure. Sure. Early in his career.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Future vice president, apparently. Well, be interesting to see him and Trump go at it. I think they're on the same side, though. Anyway, Republican. I'm going to give out a knife, actually, and this is a weird one. I've been watching a lot of The Bear recently. I love The Bear. It's a great show. It's about cooking. And I spotted one on there the other day, and this is a larding knife, Larding. And what that is, it is a thin, pointed knife used for inserting lardons into meat. So lardons are little bits of bacon, to make the meat more juicy. But you don't see them, and you don't sort of fully understand what you're tasting. But geez, it's kind of there. And I'm giving this to Tampa Bay, because I think they've had a bizarrely good off-season, and they are my sneaky pick to go into the playoffs from the NFC and actually create a bit of noise. They re-signed Mayfield, who I think had a really good year. Evans was re-signed, who I thought was going to walk out the door. Levante David, Winfield was signed. Carlton Davis went to Detroit, and they let Shaq Barrett go. But they've kept who they wanted to keep. I think it's a really good core. And they drafted Graham Barton, who I think is going to come in and be an instant starter. So, and just good depth. So, and credit to them. I'm not a huge fan of the Tom Brady experience, just purely because he's Tom Brady. But they've gone there. They've built up a team to win a Super Bowl. They did it. Generally speaking, what happens after that is just a complete crash to earth. But they're managing it really, really well. So, I'm giving you a larding knife. Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Nice. I reckon if you'd pulled that out 12 months ago, which is what Tampa Bay ended up doing last year, getting to the playoffs, knocking off the Eagles, we would have all thought you were crazy. But yeah, not a bad shout there, Jackie boy. All right, I think we go one more each, one knife and one spoon each. Actually, no, I'm just going to go one final spoon for me, and you guys can round out the segment before we quiz the brains out of this lovely guest of ours. Okay, final spoon, and it's a big one. And I don't mean this the wrong way, but it's going to the Chargers PR team. Apparently, none of the three of Alistair, Jack, or myself qualified for being the greatest international fan.
Oh, no.
So some guy from Melbourne is in Detroit reading out Justin Eboigbe's pick in the fourth round. I'm going to tell you right now, no disrespect to this Michael fella. I don't know if he subscribes to the show. I don't know if he listens. I hope he does. But Chargers PR, you're on notice. Next year, you'll need to fork out for 3 tickets. That's all I have to say.
Amen.
I don't have to revisit this again.
Yeah, I don't need another knife or spoon. I'm 100% behind you. And if you need another podcaster to help spread this message, I will absolutely do it. Because I saw that and went, wait, I seriously thought of the 3 of you guys. And I went, really? Out of all the people to put on stage, it wouldn't be one of you 3? Seriously, I really had that thought live on the draft going, I can't believe that these guys didn't get on there. They have an international fan from Australia, and they didn't pick either of you guys. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, very good, Garrett.
Thank you, Garrett. All right. My last one. I'm handing out a spoon. I'm handing out a cocaine spoon.
Ooh. Okay.
I'm giving it to the NFL. The NFL, who produce the finest, most addictive product on earth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're doing, though, is they're taking advantage of these completely addicted and hooked addicts. Users. Thank you, Andy.
That's us.
And what they're doing is they're diluting their substance in a couple of ways I'm not happy about it, Garrett, because I think it mainly affects overseas fans. Last season, they did away with a product they had called NFL Game Pass, and they sold the rights to DAZN, who is mainly a mixed martial arts platform. The quality was worse. Basically, if you're an overseas fan, when you try and watch the NFL on a Sunday, just doesn't have the same features. The coach's film is not as good. It buffers. There are annoying adverts. So the NFL's just given the big flip the bird to its overseas fans. And then just in the last 24 hours, at least for Jack and me, one of our great inspirations as podcasters has been a podcast called Around the NFL, which has been on for 11 years. Greg Rosenthal, Dan Hansis, Mark Sessler. Overnight, they announced that they were cutting that show after 11 years, and they didn't give those guys any notice. They had their last show 6 weeks ago. No one's heard from them. On Reddit, people have been asking, like, what's happened to this show that draws tens and thousands of listeners per week? And I don't know, the NFL, like any kind of behemoth, they kind of start to neglect some of the true fans. So I'm handing the cocaine spoon to the NFL. But like any addict, I'll be there week 1 in September just lapping it up. And now they're saying they're going to be playing a game in Melbourne one year. They might have an NFL game in Australia, and I'll be there. So I'm addicted, but stop taking advantage of me, NFL, please.
You're not even mentioning like all the streaming services they're making everybody else get and putting it on different days and holidays.
Well, give us the US experience. So there is similar things, annoyances.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's no longer Thursday and Monday and Sunday. It's different days. It's Saturday. They're putting it on multiple different it used to be just on, if you get the basic package, you get every single game. Now, you got to have Amazon or I think it was on Peacock or whatever it was. Yeah. Bill's game was on Peacock last year. Now they're adding more streaming services. It's crazy. There's no one place to get NFL games like it used to. Now you have to pay and go above and beyond and put more money into the product because we are addicts and we will keep doing that. We're not going to say no. And so they got us by the bootstraps. And we're going to keep doing it. There's nothing I'm going to do about it. I'm going to keep doing it, but they're just going to keep adding more streaming services to us. And we're just going to have to grin and bear it, really.
Well, that's why we have platforms like this. So we can, try and eke some sympathy out of
the
ether.
I think this will help.
Justified, right?
Yeah.
I've got nothing left, but Alistair, you did leave out, and I don't mean to nitpick, but you did leave out Westling there as well. Obviously, he was a large part of the NFL. RIP. He's a wonderful man as well. Yeah. Listen, I have to do it because I hate America's team. Them boys, I'm giving out a dough spoon to them. For mixing dough.
Well.
And little Ezekiel Elliott has come back from his time at the Patriots, and I have no idea what they are doing over. Are they all in? Are they all out? Talk about an immature roster with really good headline talent and then nothing. Be interesting to see what them boys do. Probably make the playoffs and then go out in the first round again. So dough spoon to Jarrah and Elliott.
Crazy what they're doing over there.
Should have been a Thanksgiving bowl cereal spoon for Ezekiel Elliott. His own shit. Yeah. Last one from you, Garrett. If you've got one, man.
No, I want to take this time to say I really feel like it's a shame that the NFL didn't include you guys in that pick, and it feels like if you really want to get to the international fan base, you got to make it easier for you guys to watch it, and you got to include these three of anybody if you're going to have the Chargers do anything. So it was really a shame that they didn't do it, and you guys deserve to be, all three of you deserve to be on that stage next year.
And if we do, we'll drop by San Diego for another beer and some Mexican food, buddy.
Yeah, sounds
Lock
good.
it in.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Yeah, awesome. All right, well, that's an edition of Knife or Spoon for this week. Good fun. Guys, now it's time to get into the Thunder Down Under Aussie quiz. We're going to ask Garrett 3 questions, something to do with Australia. Chances of him getting them right are slim to fuck all. He'll receive a score out of 3 to be compared against other guests. If he does get 3 out of 3, Al's got a bonus question for him. So, Jack, do you want to start it off? What have you got?
I get multiple choice, right?
Just yeah.
Okay.
I assume so. If you get it right, you will hear this.
Okay.
If you get it wrong.
Okay. I won't be hearing that one. What's the record? What's the record on this?
Alex Indstorf got 3 out of 4 from Guilty as Charged and Bold Breakdowns.
Okay, 3.
Most people get 0 or 1. Yep.
Okay.
Damn. All right, Jack, fire it away. You guys control your own right or wrong buzzers.
Okay. Control right or wrong. Okay, can do. Okay, Garrett, here we go.
Yeah.
What is the popular Australian dish that consists of a breaded and fried chicken schnitzel topped with tomato sauce and melted cheese? I'll give you 3 options. Is it A, chicken parmigiana, B, screw the chick, or C, chicken clucker?
Okay, so the first one is not right. That's Italian. Chicken. Now say it again. It's chicken with cheese on top.
So chicken. So it's breaded and fried.
Yeah.
It's a schnitzel topped with tomato sauce and melted cheese.
Okay.
And so is it chicken parmigiana,
right,
screw the chick, or chicken clucker?
Okay, it's not parmigiana because there's schnitzel in it. Chicken clucker seems too funny. I think you added that for the funniness. I'm gonna do the second one, B.
We We're going to have a fight here.
No way! What is it?
Unfortunately, it's called chicken parmigiana in Australia. Yes.
Wait a second.
We don't need a recount.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Keep going.
Okay, I'm Italian, and chicken
Yeah,
parmigiana.
I'm half Italian as well.
Right. Okay. So chicken parmigiana does not have schnitzel in it.
It does
So-
in Australia.
But you can't call it that. You can't call a
I know.
basic Italian dish without schnitzel on it chicken parmigiana if it has schnitzel on it. It's got to be something else. This is wild.
So talk
Hey,
us through
listen.
Parmigiana, what you're used to, Garrett. What
It's-
type of chicken?
It's the exact same thing. Usually, it's a it's a breaded chicken, but it's like beat it down. So it's a very thin type chicken normally. Breaded, fried, cheese, sauce on top. It sounded exactly like it, but then there's no schnitzel or anything on top. And normally there's like a
That's the
noodle,
same
like
thing.
a
That's
spaghetti.
what we call breaded chicken schnitzel. We use them as synonyms.
Well, then that's where I am.
So
wrong.
when you're
There's
saying schnitzel,
I'm
yeah.
thinking of like German schnitzel, like the hot
yeah.
dog sausage.
Oh, okay.
So damn. Oh, see, because that's exactly it. And then I was like, well, there's no sausage on top of that. That can't be Parmigiana. Damn it. Okay. All right. Okay.
Okay.
I lost
Man,
my
this is
technicality. Got
this
it.
is the TDU quiz where even the easy questions are bullshit.
Yeah. It's bullshit. Exactly. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Al, over to
I'll
you,
jump in. Hopefully
Dang.
this is less controversial.
Okay.
Every year, Garrett, tourists travel to a place in Western Australia called Lake Hillier to visit its famous what colour? So the lake is a certain colour.
Okay.
A, rainbow. B, orange. C, pink. D, turquoise.
Oh God. you
Lake
gave me-
Hillier is what colour?
Okay. All right. All right. I'm gonna say rainbow. I'm gonna get. Oh Jesus.
Sorry, brother. It is a pink lake because there's this algae that inhabits the lake and it gives it a nice reflective pink color. It's amazing to see,
Oh.
but I've never seen it myself.
I wanted it to be rainbow. That's why I said rainbow.
No. All right, Andy, come on. We've got to salvage this segment or we'll never have another guest on the show.
I can't
Let's go.
believe we're calling schnitzel a breaded chicken. But go ahead.
Yeah.
This is wild.
Yeah, well, with the Olympics coming up soon, I thought I'd throw one kind of tinted that shade at you, Garrett. So
Okay.
my question to you is, what is the most number of combined medals, that's medals, not metals, Australia has won at any given Summer Olympic game? Is it A, 25, B, 58, C, 80, D, 120?
Give me A and B again.
25 was A and 58 was B.
I'm gonna say B. 58. Let's go! We got it done! Yeah, baby! Woo! Champs here. Perfect. See?
Amazing.
At least I got
Great
one.
job,
That's
man.
all that matters.
That's how you end it. That reaction was everything.
Parmesan. Damn it. All right. I'll take you guys.
He hates you, Jack. We're
damn.
not getting any invites on Lightning Round, Jack. You've screwed this for us.
Too
You
good.
guys are always welcome.
Glad we could finish on a high after, yeah. Rainbow-colored lake would be pretty cool to see. I don't
Yeah.
know how
The
that
only
would-
reason why I
that
picked
would work. And yeah, culinary disputes of what a palm is. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, man, look, once again, thanks so much for coming on the show, shooting the shit with us for a tick over an hour. We're really excited to see what more content you, Jamie, and Craig have coming up. Listeners out there, you can find Garrett at Garrett Sisti on X. Anything super special that you want to sort of plug for yourself?
No, you guys are great. I really appreciate all
stop
three
it.
of you guys. No, I mean it. You guys have always been really kind to me before the podcast, back, Bolts from the Blue through Twitter or X or whatever, and anything in between, whether it's in the comment section of Bolts from the Blue or it's, anywhere else in the DMs or, on Twitter. It's always been a privilege to be able to talk to you guys. You guys are some of the good ones. So I really do appreciate the three of you, and thank you for having me on.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we have to throw a lot of that at our chief creep, Al, the DM sleeper.
I do slide
but
into
hey,
the
man.
DMs a fair bit. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Always
hey,
welcome.
Look, you know, we don't just give credit to where it ain't due. So you guys have been doing an awesome thing, blazing the trail for all Chargers podcasts for a long time. So thank you. Keep it up. We love the relationship that we're forming with you guys, and watching it grow and just having that connection. It's really awesome. So once again, thanks for jumping on the show.
Thanks, mate.
We're gonna have another couple of weeks before we fetch another guest here on TDU in this off season. Until then, everybody, y'all take it easy, and we'll see you next time on Thunder Down Under Chargers podcast.
So yeah.
Backpedals looking, firing. He's got Floyd turning. Got it! Zigzag, 10, 5, high step, touchdown! San Diego!
Woo! Good night! Good night to all!